So welcome everyone. This is great to see everyone here, to see your faces or to see your names, and many that I recognize, and many from across the country. My name is Sherilyn Sprackman, and I am the co-chair of the Coordinating Committee of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region of KAIROS. Welcome to everyone as we join from many communities across Canada, from many Christian faith expressions. We are living our Christian faith as we learn about and support KAIROS programs internationally and in our country. This gathering will feature the momentum of KAIROS programs. We will start with land acknowledgement and reflections. We welcome a special guest, Shona Fulcher, Director of Operations at KAIROS Canada. She will be followed by 5 talented and committed staff, each speaking of their work at KAIROS. Please offer your questions after the staff presentations. The questions may be put into the chat box. We will have time after all 5 speakers to answer your comments and questions. After the questions, we will have Great Lakes St. Lawrence news, and then we will have Shannon Neufeld present exciting KAIROS updates about next year. We will be concluding this evening about 9 Eastern Standard Time. Now let me go ahead and let me introduce Elizabeth Snell, with whom I share the leadership of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region. Elizabeth is the regional representative to KAIROS National Network. She is also the lead at the Guelph KAIROS Group. Elizabeth.
Hello and welcome. My name is Elizabeth Snell. I was born in Guelph and am a settler of English, Scottish, and Irish descent. Generations ago, my ancestors, probably without knowing their treaty responsibilities, let alone fulfilling them, settled on Treaty 6 land in what we call Saskatchewan and several treaty lands in what we call Southern Ontario. Finally, we settlers are starting to listen. We acknowledge that we in Guelph are guests on the ancestral lands of the Adirondack and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Guelph is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and is part of a long-established traditional hunting ground for the 6 nations of the Grand River. Like most of KAIROS Great Lakes St. Lawrence region, Guelph is also included under the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. The dish represents the land, the spoon, the people living and relying on that land, all with an obligation to share it fairly and sustainably. Many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have come from across Turtle Island call this region home today. We are grateful for the Indigenous people's centuries of stewardship of the region's land, waters, and air. Our treaty responsibilities, illustrated by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, include respectful partnership with our Indigenous neighbors to implement wise ecological stewardship carried out with understanding and recognition of Indigenous knowledge, values, and perspectives. We must acknowledge the enormous damage caused by our consumerist, colonialist, fossil fuel burning society. And we must commit to using our skills and energy to work toward an alternative system that honors nature and the rights of all peoples, including those 7 generations hence. We are very pleased to welcome Bruce Weaver to present an opening Indigenous reflection. Bruce is a member of KAIROS Guelph and affiliated with the Church of the Apostles, a local Anglican church. He has facilitated many KAIROS blanket exercises for schools, churches, city council, and community groups in Guelph, and has contributed enormously to the community's awareness of the Indigenous worldview. He'll introduce himself in the traditional way.
Thank you, Liz. A wonderful land acknowledgement. as always. Thank you so much. Sego, everyone. Deogena de Yangyats, Ganyankahaga, Niio Kwaganyatan. In the Mohawk language, my name is roughly means his bright fire, although recently I've been told to drop the his, so perhaps bright fire is closer to the Mohawk words. My people came originally from the lakes in upper state New York, and then moved to the Bay of Quinte. We were closely affiliated with German settlers who were United Empire loyalists, and so that region, Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, has a very interesting history behind it. The last part of my naming indicated that I was Turtle Clan, one of the 3 clans of the Mohawk Nation. As a reflection, I'd like to again thank Elizabeth. She didn't leave me much room because she is so thorough in her work. I'd like to take that acknowledgement and add a couple of little pieces. The first piece being, when so many of us are on Zoom meetings or the like during the day and evenings, it might be an opportunity to consider that spoon in another light. It's a rounded object, not a sharp object. Perhaps it's a hint for us to not use sharp words when we come together in these gatherings. Let me move beyond that and say, as an Anglican churchgoer, there have been some attempts to use the land acknowledgement as part of the service, but not leave it in isolation. So many of you will be familiar with the phrases, children of Noah, grafted onto the root of Abraham, received through Moses the 10 Commandments. And now we add to that, as Canadians, we are party to the treaties. And here you can insert your own and add perhaps something like, all who live here remain parties to these treaties. And if we take that aspect, not only do we incorporate it into the service, it reminds us of our responsibilities, and we can continue those responsibilities and treaty obligations right to our baptismal vows. And I really like that concentration within the service so that it's not an add-on, it's not a piece that hangs there and, as some people have noted, can become rote work. And so to avoid that, another thought is that as much as possible, we should be speaking from the heart. It's the traditional way of Indigenous people. So let's reflect it back by speaking, what is your, as Liz did, what is your connection to the land and the waters where you reside? Then it becomes a really authentic because you're taking ownership. I remember one group who were artisans, and they said, well, that's how we gain our inspiration and our belief in what we are doing, that it makes sense to us when it's based on the land and water. So I offer these as thoughts that I've gathered over the last few years working with church groups, working with KAIROS. It's always a pleasure to be with you as a KAIROS group. I find you have that ability to hear and to listen, and that is so important because often in Indigenous societies, often much is left unsaid for you to observe. I can remember many times trying to ask an elder a question and feeling I was being ignored. But what I was really being told was, watch and listen, and then you will know. And maybe later you will have questions that have more depth because you've waited and listened. So on that note, let us all listen and take careful note of what is being said tonight. Yahweh, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, we will have lots of time for listening tonight, and also being able to hear from the heart as we hear speakers who will be passionate in what they say. So learning from the heart. From the KAIROS leadership, we are now privileged to have Shona Fulcher, Director of Operations from the KAIROS office in Toronto. Shona?
Thank you, Sherilyn. Good evening, everyone. I am going to do as Bruce said and speak from the heart. I want to say welcome to everybody here and to say welcome from the leadership team and the steering committee. I know Leah wanted to be here and wasn't able to, so thank you for letting me be here in her stead. I want to say how amazing it is to see how many people out tonight. I have been with KAIROS in the Director of Operations for just over a year and a half, and to be able to see the breadth and depth of this community when they come together and when they work is truly something to bring some joy to my heart, and that is something that in some of the times over the course of this year has been a challenge. So I want to offer my incredible gratitude and say you're in incredibly good hands this evening. I'm pretty excited myself to hear the team speak, having these subject matter experts tell you about the work that they are doing and that we are doing. It's really a wonderful thing to be able to sit there and listen. I also want to say that it's been a tough year. It's been an unprecedented year, and that I have a very strong belief in the ability for people of conscience and faith and communities to come together and put change out into the world. And so I also wanted to say an incredible thank you to you who have done that and are here today to listen. We couldn't do it without you. KAIROS could not do it without you. KAIROS is 25 years old. Well, sometimes it's 22, sometimes 25 years old. And it's not possible for us to do this work without you. It's not possible for us to do this work without your support, without your energy and effort, without people who have donated to KAIROS in the past and continue to do so. I do also just want to say that Shannon is going to share a link with you as well, because we are also in the middle of a postal strike and we support labor movements around the world. And so if we want to make sure that people can support KAIROS and connect. And so we will share that link with you as well. Thank you so much for all that you've done. And I can't wait to hear more this evening. And I'm going to pass it back to Sherilyn. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shona. I'm glad to hear you talk about the postal strike. And of course, it's going to have an effect upon KAIROS too, with being able to have things flow in to your office.
We do, but we have an incredible team and they've given some great solutions. So feel free to check out the link. There's lots of good stuff there.
Good, thank you. Now we will move on to our speakers. Our first speakers work in gender justice. Sylvia Cristina Vasquez-Aguin is the Global Partnerships Coordinator for Latin America and Gender Justice, and Danielle Camtier-Nono is the African Partnerships and Global Climate Justice Program Coordinator. So welcome to these two young people here, Sylvia and Camty, and Danielle.
Thank you very much. I'm also Danielle, I guess, but she will follow me, no worries. I am really happy to be here. Let me tell you something super quick. This was one of my first roles when I was hired 2 years ago. I remember Shannon said to me, "Can you help me translate for an event like this?" On the chat, and I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, I have to do it good. And here I am, 2 years later, almost 2 years later. Really happy and really honored to be here sharing you my work. So let me show you my work, a little bit of what I do. I am the Gender Justice Coordinator, but I also coordinate programs in Latin America. But gender justice issues transcend the regions, are part of our everyday life. Like when you deal who is going to pick up the dishes after we eat at the table, or we argue who does the chores, we are dealing with gender issues. And the most important aspect of my mandate is looking for the gender impact of resource extraction. Much more complicated than just picking up the dishes, but really hurting our communities. From Turtle Island to Aviala, all the indigenous nationalities and indigenous territories has been dispossessed, suffered all sorts of violence due to extractivist industries or extractivist economies. So from this picture in Turtle Island to the rest of Latin America, I can tell you a little bit of stories. One of them has to do with civil society organizations, like this one in Ecuador. So the idea is we are not alone trying to fix these things, and KAIROS always would find amazing partners. Always we are looking for where the fight is done, where the most intense resistance to this kind of economy is happening, and we will find for sure women and grassroots organizations keep Mother Earth alive. So this is the kind of partners you are supporting, and you are learning, and you're listening as to speak to, and they are the most important part of my work. This is one of the many realities we face in all Latin America and in Canada and North America and Turtle Island. Resource extraction. This picture is an open mine, a golden open mine in Colombia. So you can see the destruction of the environment, but you can see all the tiny towns all around this big chain of mines. And in all of these situations, you will find different impacts that affect intensely or more intensely to women, girls, children, and all other sexualities that don't align with the dominant masculine extractivist industries. In this case, we find not easily, but one of the most evident impacts has to do with health. And we know that I can tell you stories about Mexico and, like the pipeline going through Canada up to Mexico, and then Guatemala, gold extraction, and Colombia too, the Amazonian in Ecuador and Peru being destructed just to get a little bit more gold. And let me start with critical minerals. So in all of that extractivist economy, we will find several impacts. So you can see health, pollution, and the damage on the environment will affect women and women's health and their communities, because they're connected to water. Just bringing water to their towns can expose them to harmful chemicals. And the alteration of the environment also will affect their health. But between these two points, we can find economic impacts, because this cash economies alter the other ways of trade and exchange, other economies that exist that are not capitalist in many of these indigenous territories where women are at the center. Finally, the political impact of the women leadership being destroyed, being dismantled, being attacked, and being excluded of the decision-making and negotiation process. And finally, labor is not always welcome. The promise of we will bring jobs to their community are usually poisoned promises. So you know all of this. I'm not gonna tell you more than you already know. What I can tell you is that the partners are doing amazing things thanks to your support and their braveness, by the way. What do? I try to help the best way I can, but I couldn't do it without all of you. Finally, what I do here in Canada, I represent KAIROS, and KAIROS belongs to all of these different networks. And in Latin America, we're part of one of the most extensive networks of women's social organizations connected to the defense of environmental and social rights and rights of communities and women. So this is it. This is the moment to say thank you. This is the moment to say, come, ask me your questions, and let me connect you with my partners. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. Just a second, Rachel. Is Rachel on the call?
Yes.
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 Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, let me read.
All right, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. To follow up with the great presentation that Sylvia just did, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. Danielle Camtier, and I am the Global Partnership Coordinator for Africa and Climate Justice. It is a pleasure to be among you guys tonight. So today we will be talking about gender justice and climate change and how our partner actually working on this specific thematic thanks to the support of the KAIROS network. So first of all, I just want to remind you that current priorities for KAIROS actually include the Women of Courage program, and this program is rooted in and shaped by the wisdom and experience of KAIROS, long-standing partnerships with the Canadian and international organization, network, and movement. And on the African continent, we have partners in 3 countries where we are doing an amazing work regarding peace building, human rights, and ecological justice. First of all, as you can see on the screen, we have All Watch Africa. All Watch Africa is a KAIROS partner since 2020. They are based in Accra, Ghana, West Africa, and they work across 50 countries to actually address all the negative impact of oil, gas industry on people and environment, specifically women. And over the few years, All Watch Africa has built a very strong and active network to respond to the impact of fossil fuels activities on African people and the environment. We also have the South Sudan Churches Council, which is a partner of KAIROS since 2013. So they basically provide platform to enhance the spirit of cooperation towards collective action for peace and through the church, because the church is a peacemaker. And for South Sudan Churches Council, peace is actually more than just the absence of war and silence of guns. It is a place where we commit ourselves to fight against overnight violence and everything that is a danger to like human rights and human lives. And we finally have Héritier de la Justice. Héritier de la Justice is actually based in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, in Central Africa, and is a KAIROS partner since 2005. And they basically specialize in peace promoting in the Great Lakes region in South Kivu. So what they do is that they provide legal training, information, and mediation, and they have a team of women rights advocates, lawyers, and people that basically come together against women, against gender-based violence, and to basically enhance women's rights, especially those that are victims of war. Next, let's touch base on how gender justice has an effect on climate action. So there is now a high rise in recognition of the intersecting impact of climate change, gender conflict, and economic justice through the lens of peace building. And now we see that this triple nexus, like we call it at KAIROS, is more and more considerate. So we recognize that gender justice, conflict, and climate change are all interlinked. And we came to realize that women are at the grassroots and are uniquely, positioned to contribute to sustainable natural resource management, climate resilient communities, and they can help to enhance peace and stability. And with the work that KAIROS has done before, especially in Congo and South Sudan, we came to realize that women, especially survivors of conflict and gender-based violence, when they are provided psychosocial and legal support, they regain their dignity and confidence. And since they know their rights, they become peace builder in the decision-making spaces related to peace and climate justice. And it's a plus for the society. In DRC, especially, Héritier de la Justice is working to sustain women's economic security. So research and work that has been done with Héritier de la Justice before actually showed that working on empowering women actually improve economic security and the safety of the local environment, because we allow women to provide to their family more easily, and they have the capacity to participate in local decision making and peace building efforts. So as you can see on the screen, we have here two testimonies. The first testimony is from our partner in GRC, Chantal, and you can see that she's highlighting the link between gender-based violence, between climate change, and gender issues. So as you can see, she says that unpredictable rains and poor soil quality impact crop yields and women's capacity to feed their family and sell fruits and vegetables at local markets. So we can see that there's like this connection between climate issues and women's empowerment. And then on the next slide, we have our very active partner in South Sudan. Here is Juan Rachel. And she says that one of the reasons why she does advocacy is because she wants to target gender-based and inclusion of women issue, especially when it comes to climate change, because it has become a very big issue, and thousands of South Sudanese are actually affected by floods with no access at all to food and safe drinking water. So this is why KAIROS is really working toward this mission of recognizing and addressing the triple nexus, because we can't ignore the fact that they have an impact on local governments, on our partners' development, and also globally. So now, moving forward, and how we hope to continue this work with you, we would like to highlight the 16 days of activism happening now from November 25th to December 10th. And during these 16 days, we basically addressed and advocate against gender-based violence. You can follow the movement on KAIROS's social network, and also online there are many resources that address and highlight the work done during the 16 days, and why not wait to get involved as well. Even here in Canada, it's possible. We are working on advocacy and policy development through different campaigns that we are proud to be part of. Capacity development through like workshop, ACT Alliance, which is a great organization when it comes to advocacy, and we gain knowledge for that and a good collaboration. We have local organization. For example, in Africa, we have Héritier de la Justice, we have South Sudan Churches Council, All Watch Africa, and many more organizations in Latin America, like Sylvia mentioned, and around the world as well, and even here in Canada and the Canadian government. We are looking forward to supporting partners in the work that they are doing on conflict, climate, and gender through advocacy, public engagement, and funding. And we are looking forward to also highlighting the work that we are doing at different high-level panels, like the upcoming commission on the Statue of Women happening next March 2025. And this is just one event amongst many other where we could come together and address, raise awareness, and raise women's voices from the local community to a more high seat. So we hope to continue this collaboration, and thank you very much for your attention.
So now, thank you very much to you, Sylvia and Danielle, and for telling us about the partnerships that KAIROS has in South American countries and in the African nations. And I will remind people to please, because we're going to be hearing 4 programs, and it's a lot of information to take in. If you have any questions or comments, put them into the chat, or just keep them in mind, because you can remember to do them, to offer them after we've had everybody speak. So we'll go on now to Leah Schifferah, who is a Migrant Justice team lead, and welcome to Leah.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Sorry, are you able to see it?
I can see it, Leah. Can you put it to slideshow?
Yes, I'm trying. It's just pausing.
Okay.
How about now?
There you go.
Does it work? Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leah Schifferah, and I'm the Migrant Justice team lead. And I am excited to share with you the work that I'm doing here at KAIROS around migrant justice. Okay, so I guess I wanted to just break down the importance of the work that I'm doing. So migrant justice right now is about creating a fair and equitable system that protects the rights and dignity of all individuals who move across borders, whether for work, study, or caregiving. So this was important for me to share with you all that this migrant work doesn't necessarily only work on agricultural workers or temporary foreign workers, but also encompasses the importance of international students as well as caregivers. So in Canada, temporary foreign workers, caregivers, and international students represent distinct yet interconnected groups that face systematic barriers, including precarious immigration status, limited access to social services, and vulnerability to exploitation. And I wanted to make sure that we all understood the importance of this, because with legislation right now, there's a lot of different changes as well as definitions as to what is a migrant worker. But as KAIROS's definition, this is something that we are focusing on here. So Statistics Canada reports that temporary foreign workers represent around 1/4 of all agricultural workers in 2021. And this is very important to know because this comes down to workers coming into Canada from the Caribbean, as well as South America, as well as also all around the world for those that are who apply. So over 100,000 temporary foreign workers enter Canada annually, and they play a crucial role in sectors like agriculture, caregiving, and construction. So labor exploitations, there's more than 25% of migrant workers in Canada that report and experience exploitation or unsafe working conditions. The numbers are definitely higher, but for some folks, they're very nervous as well as scared to report anything because of fear of their employers finding out or being asked to leave. Most migrant workers are tied to a single employer through the tied work permit system, which make it very challenging to leave abusive situations. Even if they have complaints or even have noticed any types of abuse, a lot of workers just stay quiet and don't really necessarily report it. And like I said, the fear of them being kicked out of the country is really, really high. And as we know, migrant workers contribute billions annually to Canada's GDP, yet often they lack access to basic social protections. Okay, I wanted to just share with you all a story. from a young person that connected with KAIROS. So I just put his initials. So KM is a 32-year-old man from Jamaica and was offered a life-changing opportunity by a recruitment agency that was promising a high-paying construction job in Canada. So when they saw that there was an opportunity for them, they obviously jumped on the chance and was like, you know what, I'm coming to Canada. I have a high-paying job. This sounds very good. But the agency assured them that in order for him to get his work permit and eventual permanent residency, they asked him for a fee of 10,000 Canadian dollars. Desperate to support his family, KM borrowed money from relatives and friends to pay the fee. So upon arrival in Canada, he discovered the devastating truth. The job actually didn't exist and the work permit was fake. KM was left stranded, unable to work, and with no means to return home legally. Determined to improve his situation, KM contacted local advocacy groups for help, including KAIROS, and that's how I got to know him. And we were able to connect him with legal aid, food resources, and temporary housing with with other partners as well. So today, KM's connected with lawyers, helping him file a complaint against this fraudulent agency. So a lot of recruitment agencies are popping up here in Canada, and they promise a lot of workers as well as students a promise of there's opportunities or you can get into so-and-so classes. But once you pay that fee, a lot of them just disappear. They don't end up picking up their phone calls. They don't actually pick up, respond through emails. And a lot of these people just come to Canada not knowing what to do. So in order for us to continue supporting them, we do build these strong partners and as well as networks where we have different types of legal aids. We do have other advocacy groups as well as shelters and food banks. But all of this is to share that these recruitment agencies pop up now and here and there. And even though we could push a lot of legal files against them, they just change their name. They close down the businesses and then create a new one. Okay. So sorry. Okay. So as of right now, presently, we are continuing to work with the advocacy. So advocacy for migrant workers focuses on the policy changes and raising awareness about their challenges and contributions. So this includes supporting our partners with the conducting of research as well as drafting policy work and purpose of reforms. So we try to continue working on improving work permits as well as addressing open work permits as well as their employment. We continue to engage with decision makers through meetings, consultations, and proposals to government agencies like CCR, ESDC, and IRCC, which is very essential to our work. Advocacy also includes mobilizing communities by building coalitions, organizing grassroots campaigns, and empowering workers to share their stories. We continue also to public awareness efforts such as storytelling, workshops, and social media campaigns. And we help to highlight systematic issues like wage theft and unsafe working conditions. So I just put a couple of things that we've been doing in the this year. So KAIROS continues to urge Canada to regularize the undocumented and end indentured labor, and this was sent to the Prime Minister, our MPPs and MPs. This letter is also on our website, so for our members and networks that we are connected to, they're also able to copy and paste this and also send it to their MPs. We also continue to advocate for policy changes that support migrant workers. And this is us, and this is like myself as well as some of our KAIROS team that was at the rally in September at downtown Toronto. And we, like I said, continue to participate in consultations. I'm currently in Ottawa right now at the Canadian Council for Refugees consultations, where we're continuing to have these conversations with migrant workers as well as other partners and organizations that support migrant workers with their daily work. This is working. Okay. Another pillar that we're working with is education. So KAIROS remains a cornerstone in educating our networks about the importance of addressing migrant justice. We continue to actively educate the current narratives of misinformation around immigration and Canadian legislation. Through our work as well of our partners, we're actively challenging the narratives and misconceptions that unfairly position migrant workers and immigration is a problem. Advocacy, education, such as supporting the migrant workers exercise and bringing awareness around migrant worker rights and contributions and challenges of migrant workers to foster understanding and inclusivity. So this is where we go into different community spaces, religious spaces, and focus on bringing the different awareness around migrant workers and their rights, and as well as the challenges that they face. And we've continued to support our partners by educating migrant workers about their rights, employment standards, health and safety regulations, and immigration policies. So a picture right here is an event that we did with the Caribbean Workers Outreach Workers Program in Niagara Falls in May, where over 300 Caribbean migrant workers came to an event where they had an opportunity to play dominoes, but also connect with other community organizations that have supports in their neighborhood that they may have never really noticed or seen because they were busy just working. So yeah, we try to encompass a time for enjoyment and for them to build community, but also have information and education and network. And yeah, it was very, like, we had like over 3 buses full of workers that came on their own. It was after work, so they came. They didn't care how tired they were. They were really excited to meet folks as well as just to connect. So the next pillar that we've been focusing on is solidarity. And a partner from CCR actually came to me and told me, like, KAIROS is actually a very big powerhouse when it comes to solidarity. And they said solidarity is really your strength. And I can't agree anymore. Like, I can't agree more. So solidarity among our partners and networks is essential for the effectiveness and sustainability of the program. So we wanted to unite diversity organizations, and we want to continue amplifying advocacy efforts as well as strengthen influence and policies. We want to continue ensuring the messaging as well as making sure it's consistent. We also continue to enable resource sharing, such as pooling expertise and funding, while fostering cross-sector collaboration that broadens perspectives as well as leading to interdisciplinary solutions. This is a way for us to continue building resilience against challenges by distributing responsibilities. We make sure that we try to adjust like some of the education pieces around it, and then we want to also continue to maintain momentum. Okay, so the vision for the future. So December 18 is coming up, and that is around the International Migrants Day. So in Canada, this is where migrants play a vital role in sectors like agriculture, healthcare, and construction. This is an opportunity to reflect on their contributions to society and the systematic barriers they face. Right now, KAIROS is a part of the planning committee with IMA, which is International Migrants Alliance. So there is a chapter in Toronto that KAIROS is part of. This is where we're going to continue putting this on social media, working with other partners as well as other networks that are doing the same work, but making it like joint. We're combining it rather than having separate different letters or separate different campaigns. We're hoping that this is a way for all of us to come together and have a stronger voice rather than just having individual voices. There is going to be more news around this. It's still in the planning process right now, but this is where we want to continue making sure that there's awareness around December 18. We also want to partner with migrant workers and see what they want us to put out. We also they've all asked us to actually not come into work on December 18th to make sure that people understand the importance of this day. So employers are even looking at this day as like, okay, is very, very strong, and we want to make sure that their voices are being heard. So yeah, that campaign is coming up. You'll be hearing more of this in the next couple weeks. And we also want to continue to support partners with collaborative advocacy calls and events. Recently, lawyers have been reaching out to me around how we could support with class actions and strategic litigation around the work that they're doing, where they're supporting and advocating for workers right now. And in order for them to be, in order for them to even get their these class actions out, they want us to support them in marketing this as well as putting this out to other farm workers or other workers that might be going through it too, and then want to be part of the class actions. So this is really important because not only are we just advocating through these campaigns, but we're also trying to get into a strategic legal campaign around it too. And we also want to be able to create inclusive spaces for education and support and empower migrants by providing resources, knowledge, and advocacy for their rights. A big piece around this is going to be around like the recruitment fraud awareness, where we're training and identifying and avoiding scams by unethical agencies. So this is teaching the public as well as migrant workers on how they can be able to identify these scams, and how, yeah, as I mentioned earlier with KM, we hope that this is not going to be something that we know that these agencies are here and present. As much as we want to be able to stop all of them, the best way to actually approach this is actually educating people around it. Yes, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. It's very, very busy. The work that you're doing has a lot of areas to get into. And of course, it's something that we hear about when we listen to the news about the workers in Canada and the many different streams, people coming to Canada and difficulties that have arisen. So, and your advocacy, the advocacy work of KAIROS can be so, so important. So thank you. We follow now with a program in which KAIROS has been a leader for many years, Indigenous relations. I welcome Connor Sarasan, Interim Manager of Indigenous Programs. So welcome, Connor.
Thank you, Sherilyn. Welcome, everyone. I too am going to share my screen. Just give me one, bear with me here 1 second. Perfect. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes.
Great. Of course it's, hold on now. There we go. So with Indigenous programs, there are two paths that really do walk hand in hand under the same umbrella. Many of you are very familiar with the KBE, which is the KAIROS Blanket Exercise, and Indigenous rights. And under these two areas, really the KBE is focused on education of our true history from the lens of the First Peoples, and Indigenous rights for the advocacy and policy change. And the foundation and guiding force of these two programs is KIRK. And they are here to help guide on the issues to be moved forward, and report on the integration or braiding, if you will, Indigenous views throughout the organization and its programs, and have Indigenous collaboration and inclusion be the forethought rather than an afterthought. After being on pause for quite some time, we're currently in the second phase of reopening the KBE. Now, just because, maybe on the surface, things may seem to be a little bit quieter right now on the home front, a lot is really happening in the background, including the development of facilitator training. And with that, we are looking at a full launch in 2025, and we will continue to steward the KBE program by working with community to further develop scripts and then maintain current information within those scripts. And a very large scope would be to offer to our partners the opportunity for more for their repertoire, more than just offer the KBE itself. And currently, there are almost 300 individual and organizations waiting to sign agreements. So that'll take us right through into 2025. And, so the KBE is really, hopping behind the scenes. Now, with the Indigenous rights side of things, we have lost a little bit of traction on the Indigenous rights front, with the role being vacant really for quite some time now. However, we we will be filling the role in 2025, and then, re-engage with the broader Indigenous communities on a more national level, and working with organizations on driving public support for policy change at a legislative level. So we've had, about 260 years of promises made and broken to the First Peoples of this land, working with community to ensure the laws of Canada are in harmony with the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, that's UNDRIP, and hold Canada accountable to their commitment. And in speaking of commitments, while progress has been made since the 2015 promise, and although it's been encouraging, it's still unacceptable that, we're in 2024 and there's still 29 First Nation communities with long-term drinking advisories still in effect. We honor the late, great Honorable Murray Sinclair, who died just earlier this year. And for those who may not know, Murray was instrumental in the TRC. And in 2015, the TRC began with 94 calls to action, of which only 14 have been completed to date. And only 2 of the 231 calls for justice released by the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls has been completed. We have almost 54% of our Indigenous children in foster care, aged 14 and under, while our Indigenous children only actually account for less than 8% of children across the nation. 25% of female homicide victims are Indigenous, despite making up just over 3% of the overall population of women in Canada. So this is more than 7 times that our Indigenous women are murdered. This figure doesn't include girls and Two-Spirit people. These figures should be unacceptable to everyone. These, among many other issues, is what First Peoples go to sleep with, wake up to, and carry each and every day. We do not have the luxury to put these down. However, looking forward, we continue to, really take a stand and be the voice. So a little bit of a roller coaster ride, because we do have some special projects. Aside from the advocacy campaigns of missing and murdered, and many other issues that are ongoing, WIPSI is based really on the fundamental principle of Indigenous control of Indigenous education. And education is seen as a means of protecting, preserving, and developing Indigenous cultures rather than an instrument of colonization that we know it to be now. It was in 2017 at WIPSI that partners from both Alaska and Australia first experienced the KBE. And in 2018, KAIROS met these partners and provided training to initiate their own KBE programs. And in 2019, KAIROS was able to follow up with a visit to Australia, where a partnership was established with both Western and Eastern Australia. So WIPSI really brings Indigenous peoples from around the world. It is a perfect forum to present and share the KBE to a global audience and potential, new partners from across the world. It really is our hope to participate again in 2025. We did in 2023, I believe it was, along with folks from Guatemala, Ecuador, Australia, and the US. So provided that we can secure funding, we will be going again in 2025. So going forward, looking ahead, we're really looking to build a strong Indigenous program. and focus to incorporate Indigenous evaluation and approaches into an overall development and direction of the Indigenous rights program. And using the teachings of the medicine wheel as a guiding principle is going to help build a strong program for the rights of the First Peoples in the state of what we call Canada. And the first step, looking in the north, is really deciding on the vision of the overall program and looking at the various components that make up the program based in Indigenous knowledge, and what does the planning, the measuring of a successful program really look like. And a part of that vision is, although it will take all of us collectively, it really has to be under the leadership of Indigenous peoples. And that starting with really is the leadership of the Indigenous programs being someone who is Indigenous, who has lived experience and can bring the voices of Indigenous peoples forward. And as we go around and look to the east, embarking down the path and really be open to take steps and course correct as we need. In the south, we will assess our progress, and it's really important to continue to tell our stories. Having that Indigenous lens and the Indigenous way of being, we all learn through stories, and many of you have, we've heard lots of stories already tonight, and we will continue to tell our story. We celebrate in the West as we come full circle and reflect and continue to implement, improve, and reflect. Upon reflection of the program, we're going to continue to strive for equality, and we're going to continue to work towards that. And I'm going to leave you with a last word from Chief Joseph. Chief Joseph lived from 1840 to 1904. And, he spoke up against the injustice and inequity for his people. He spoke in support of the freedom for the First Peoples, and we still continue the same quest today. Miigwech, I come to you from my traditional unceded, unsurrendered land of the Algonquin peoples of Pikwakanagan. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Connor. Yes, KAIROS has been involved in Indigenous relations and rights for so many years, and with the blanket exercise initiating, and then and it's interesting to see that you were able to share it in Australia and New Zealand. And good luck on it. Where would it be next year in that conference?
WIPC next year is in New Zealand.
Okay, so I hope you can get that trip. So thank you very much, Connor. And so we'll go on to our last speaker. As climate changes and environmental protection is close to the hearts of many of us, we welcome Beth Lorimer, Ecological Justice Program Coordinator, whom we've seen in many webinars. I've seen in many webinars anyways, from For the Love of Creation. So welcome, Beth.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. And I'm just getting my slides set up here. Are they showing in a nice format for you?
That's good now.
Yeah,
great.
yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to my colleagues who have spoken before me for sharing the good work that KAIROS is doing. I am really happy to be here with all of you to share some updates and stories from KAIROS's Ecological Justice Program this past year. I am based in Ottawa on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. And I support the work of KAIROS's Ecological Justice Program, as well as sit on a coordinating committee for the Love of Creation, which I will speak to shortly. So what are the ways in which KAIROS is trying to address these really uncertain times that we are in regarding climate and the climate and ecological crises that we're facing? These are some of the objectives that we've been working on for many years, and we continue to kind of work on these together with many different actors, including all of you, our KAIROS network, as well as partners in Canada and abroad. So some of those objectives are contributing to advocacy efforts on climate change and just transition, contributing to Christian perspectives on ecological integrity, supporting churches and people who are taking faithful action for climate justice, and contributing to building a movement, an inclusive global movement for climate justice. So I'll speak a little bit about now the ways in which we're working on these and kind of responding to some of these objectives. And I'll start with advocacy. And I wanted to highlight from this past year a win and an ongoing ask. So in June of this year, Bill C-226, which was the act respecting the development of a national strategy to assess, prevent, and address environmental racism, and to advance environmental justice, this very longly worded act was passed into law in June of this year. And this came after 10 years or more of dedicated leadership and advocacy from Indigenous and racialized activists and communities, as well as allies in Canada, including a newly formed in the last couple of years coalition for environmental and climate justice, of which KAIROS is a member. We are so grateful for the support and advocacy and persistence of this network, which helped to advocate for the passage of this bill. There was many different petitions over many different iterations of this bill. And so we're grateful for everyone's commitment to keep signing and keep contacting their elected officials. And we saw all of that good work come to fruition with the passage of this bill. In September, I had the privilege of representing KAIROS with Danielle at a government symposium to advance the implementation of this act. And so they were gathering community actors and civil society academics to talk about how this act will be implemented. And at that event, we heard from a number of different advocates who supported this bill, including Louise DeLille. She's an organizer for environmental justice for Black residents in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, and was founder of the South End Environmental Injustice Society. And she had an intergenerational interview with another young activist. So she is an elder in the community, and there was a young person. And I really appreciated the spirit of that intergenerational dialogue between the two. And they just talked about the dimensions of change and how long it takes and how it happens. Louise sharing her experiences of facing pollution and illness herself and within her family and community members over many years, to her learning about what the term environmental racism actually means and starting to connect the dots between what she was seeing where she lived and what she was hearing happening in other communities across the country, to years of convincing elected officials that this is an issue, that this is systematic, and that we need to be working to address it. So I carry that conversation. I've been carrying that conversation with me after hearing from Louise. The second advocacy piece that I'll highlight for tonight is around climate finance. We have been urging the Canadian government for many years to ramp up and pay its fair share of supporting finance for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage, climate-related loss and damage, to countries in the global south who are the most impacted by the climate crisis and have done the least to cause it. And so this month, we launched a petition. It's actually a letter to the Prime Minister focusing on the loss and damage part of that. We're urging the Canadian government to really scale up its finance around that issue. We're just coming out of the UN climate conference where we saw very little movement on this issue from global leaders. And so we need all of us to be using our voices to tell the Canadian government that we support them in using Canadian funds to really support this work. We're also advocating for things that will strengthen climate finance, so not just asking for more money, but things ensuring that those funds are gender responsive, that they are grants based, so that there's no kind of loans or conditions on paying them back, and that they're meeting the needs of those most impacted. So we will be putting a link in the chat, if my colleagues haven't already, that will send you directly to a website on the KAIROS page that has a link to that letter, which you can sign tonight if you like, or as soon as you're able, and some other resources, including a video and infographic that tells you a little bit more about the issue. So I encourage you to dig into those. I just wanted to mention all the many, and this is only just a few, many organizations and networks that KAIROS works with in order to advance advocacy around climate change and just transition and climate justice. So we work together with organizations like Climate Action Network Canada, the Green Economy Network, ACT Alliance, the Canadian Coalition for Environmental and Climate Justice, which I mentioned. The one there in the middle with the hands is the Canadian Coalition for Environmental Rights, and For the Love of Creation, which I will speak to a little bit in a little bit. There are many others, but I just wanted to highlight these, that we couldn't do the work that we do unless we were doing it together, and that is very much the spirit of KAIROS as well. An area where KAIROS has been supporting advocacy efforts around just transition in particular has been our Strengthening Voices for a Just Transition project. And this project is being supported by the Catherine Donnelly Foundation this year. As we know, we're in this time of transitioning to a clean energy economy or a low carbon economy. And this time of transition is creating a lot of opportunity for us to do things differently and to ensure that no one is left behind. And so we are wanting to center some put some focus to that idea of not leaving anyone behind as we transition, go through this transition period. And what we've been hoping to do over the course of this project is, in addition to all of the economic and job-based concerns that are being addressed, we think very centrally by government and other actors, we really want to kind of highlight the social and environmental dimensions of this transition and bring that out in some community conversations. So we've been holding some dialogues across the country. We've been working with some young adults to build up their advocacy skills to communicate around their future with elected officials, and contributing to kind of broader national advocacy efforts, urging the government to include and create strategies that will address social and environmental dimensions of just transition. With this, the community dialogues that have been held so far have been in Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Sydney and Cape Breton. And with each dialogue, it's surfaced different reactions to the term just transition, different approaches to the conversation, and a different makeup of people in the room, including different sectors represented, different leadership. And so that has been interesting to us. And what it's telling us is that there is not going to be we're not just working towards one just transition, but many just transitions that will be place-based and really led by communities. And so that is something that we'll be highlighting in the months to come as we start to wrap up this project and communicate out some of those outcomes and invite more people in the KAIROS network into that conversation. Some things that we've been hearing back from participants, and I just wanted to share kind of most recently, the picture here is shown is from the dialogue that was in Cape Breton, and that was just a couple of weeks ago. The groups that came together there, the people that were there, were so grateful for the opportunity to come together with various groups and that wouldn't otherwise have come together. And so what we were noticing is like the very different ways in which social activists, community members, and academics, for example, kind of come together on a certain topic. We also heard a lot of feedback around
how people felt pushed to exercise their imagination and visioning of the future. It's not something we get to do very often in the work we do around community organizing. And so this has been a really interesting dimension of the project and something we're looking to nurture, but people really appreciated the opportunity to do that visioning and then connect the dots on how we see an ideal future and the steps we need to get there. So I'll speak now to some of the ways in which we're supporting faithful action for climate justice, sharing a myriad of different ways in which that can happen, either through letter writing, through connecting with creation in our own ways and in our watersheds, through community events where we're coming together to hold vigils or take collective action, and to doing kind of policy and climate movement building with other organizations. And since 2020, one of the main ways in which KAIROS has been supporting people in taking faithful action for climate justice is through For the Love of Creation. For the Love of Creation is a faith-based initiative which was launched on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. It's a national initiative that's bringing together faith bodies and faith-based organizations in Canada to mobilize education, reflection, action, and advocacy on climate change. And a story I wanted to highlight from this work is around the faithful climate conversations. I wanted to ask, and I can't really see everyone in the room, but I just wanted, maybe if other folks can, or if you wanted to say in the chat, who here has heard of the faithful climate conversations? And if you have heard of them, have you participated in one or hosted one? And so would love to just see, either you can raise your hand or you can just say, oh yeah, I did one, or I've hosted one in the chat, and would love to see that after I'm finished my presentation. So the Faithful Climate Conversations, if you haven't heard of them, are a series of guides to encourage small group conversation on climate change. They invite people into a conversation starting where they are in their understanding, in their level of kind of concern about the future, as well as their engagement level. So whether they're kind of just starting to want to do some self-education versus someone who's like highly organized in a community and ready to kind of take action on something. There are 4 guides available, and they're on the For the Love of Creation website, and they're available for download. So I encourage you to check those out, and we'll add a link. But one thing that I wanted to highlight, along with one thing that KAIROS, along with members of For the Love of Creation, have been celebrating this year is the story of Sustainable Brandon. So a group in Brandon, Manitoba, connected to both KAIROS and Knox United Church, held 3 conversations in 2021 based on the Faithful Climate Conversations. And from those conversations, a group of dedicated community members came together to form an organization called Sustainable Brandon. And this community organization now has a presence in the municipality and is taking action together towards addressing climate change in the community and other sustainability efforts. And we're just so grateful for this good news story of what can happen when you engage in a climate conversation. So we hope that that inspires all of you to check out those guides and see where your conversation will take you. I just wanted to add some of the many links that can keep you connected to For the Love of Creation in both English and French. So we will share those out in the chat, and if you don't capture them now, we'll make sure that they get to you so that you can follow the work of that initiative. And I'll end with another way in which we're supporting faithful action on climate justice and building that global movement for action on climate change. And this also is recognizing that 2025 is a Jubilee year, and this is something that Shannon will speak to a little bit more shortly. But I just wanted to mention some of the work that KAIROS has done this year to connect issues around debt justice, climate justice and ecological debt as we kind of head into that Jubilee year. In August, I was selected to represent KAIROS at the World Council of Churches Ecumenical School on Governance, Economics, and Management, another mouthful, but they endearingly call it the GEM School. And I was there to meet with other church leadership around the world to engage in some coursework and projects around issues of climate change, debt cancellation, tax justice, and more. This was a really wonderful opportunity for KAIROS to make some global connections around these issues, but also for us to enrich the work that we do by hearing the stories of so many different ecumenical actors that are facing some of the impacts of these issues and the many strategies that they are taking to address them. And I was very inspired by people like Reverend Jacqueline McKenna, who's in the center of this photo. She's from the Methodist Church in Kenya, and she is a young adult part of Generation Z or Gen Z, and was in the streets with other youth this past summer to protest poverty, high rates of unemployment and inequality, and the Kenyan government's inaction to address the concerns of young people in Kenya. She spoke to us very passionately about the silence of the church in Kenya during this time of protest, and really is calling out, had been calling out the church as an ordained minister, challenging them to live up to their theologies by being proactive in addressing issues of social injustice. And I've really been taking her words kind of to heart in my work moving forward on these issues. Some of the other ways in which we have been kind of working on these issues of debt justice and climate justice is making connections around ecological debt and Canada's fair share. So how much does Canada owe the Global South for the high rates of global greenhouse gas emissions, which have been causing the climate crisis? And how much should we be reducing ourselves equitably before other countries, as well as providing robust climate finance to those communities which are most impacted? And also, how are we delivering our climate finance? So as I spoke to earlier, ensuring that those funds are delivered in grants so that they're not going to further increase the debt burden of global South economies. So I'm looking forward to digging into all of these topics, connecting the KAIROS network with global partners, with the expertise of someone like Reverend McKenna, and engaging in collective action together on Jubilee. And I know Shannon will speak a little bit more to that shortly. So I'll just end by saying, please stay in touch with me and with all of my colleagues who spoke here. We are so happy to hear from you, to answer questions, to share resources, and engage in conversation about this work. And so please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm leaving you with my email as well as my KAIROS Facebook account, which has been a little slightly dormant now that I can't share news there, which was a main way of getting some key things out to the network. But do try to follow us there or through the website. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Beth. Yes, you've covered many aspects of the environmental justice. And yes, and you're asking for people to be able to contact you and have comments and questions, but that's where we're going to go now. So I'm hoping that many people have got in their minds some questions that they want to give, but I'm going to hand this question period over now to Janice. So Janice Elzer-Etier, read the question period. Janice is the Secretary of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Coordinating Committee and also Chairwoman of the Ottawa Cornwall Development and Peace Council and Vice President of the Capital Region Interfaith Council. And she will be looking at questions that you're certainly welcome to put your hand up. On the people who are attending, put your hand up for a question, or there will be questions in the chat box. So I'll hand it over to you, Janice.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. Okay. All right, so I've gone through and seen that there have been some questions and that those 3 questions I saw have been answered. So I'm now looking for new questions. And hopefully you can put them in the chat so that I can figure out who's first and second and third, which is what I'm supposed to be doing.
And Janice, are you ready to take verbal questions as well?
I prefer to do, if people don't mind terribly much, I would prefer to do the questions in the chat first and then move into verbal questions, and I'll try to keep track of the order of the questions, but Lord knows I ain't perfect, so bear with me. I'll do my best.
I can help you because one of the first questions was directed to me and I was partially answering that in the chat, but I can just complete one of the questions that was directed to me at some point. Let me just find it. It was a long thing. Oh my goodness, almost there. No, I couldn't find it. I remember that they asked about financing from GAC and I answered, we are waiting for the next iteration of the funding. That please keep us in your prayers and your hearts and sending good vibes because we are waiting for a huge funding. Second, we actually, at the point we have 15 active solidarity partners.
This to Sylvia or to Danielle for the question about the partners in Israel and Palestine?
I can answer that one.
Okay, Sylvia.
But what is the question? Because I just see the question was about partners in Israel and Palestine. What about them exactly? Because I lost the track in the chat. We have
It's
three
much
partners.
more specific, but
Sorry,
maybe
I
Elaine.
just wanted to know how they're doing
Oh, yes,
because
of
of
course.
the war.
Of course, of course. I was feeling that the question were around that. Okay, we have partners in 2 different parts of the conflict. We have partners in the Israeli territories and in East and West Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, sorry. We have 2 Israeli organizations that we support. They're not happy, they are not fine, but they are a little bit more protected. One of them is declared as a terrorist organization, you know. Hamukat and Ben Salem are the 2 organizations that we support in the Israeli territory, and we am in the West Bank in Palestinian territory. And under the Palestinian Authority. It's far from Gaza, but they are affected. The Palestinian partner, they are facing multiple encounters with, illegal settlers. Like the checkpoints are getting more and more strict and random. So the freedom of movement is terribly boycotted and controlled. But they are doing their work, so they are still there. And with your support, they will continue.
Thank you.
No other partners, Alia, that we know, but we know that the people that works with our partners with WIAM and in the West Bank, they're following cases, and Hamuket is following cases also. So yeah, we know.
So is that the question I see about being in touch with the agencies involved in the Women of Courage that you've just said?
So that is my question, Janice. I'm just wondering if Sylvia and Danielle can just give us just an indication of what their connections are like, and how often that you may be speaking with someone in one of the agencies in the African nations or in Colombia. Just for just a general answer about that.
Maybe Rachel and Sylvia will add on it, but so far the Women of Courage program that we are working with are part of Global Affairs Canada, and the relationship that we have with them is that we did some funding proposal in the past to support some project happening on the local level. with our partners. If I take the example of our partner in Africa, Ecological Justice South Sudan Churches Council, we've helped them through the Women, Peace and Security initiative under the Women of Courage program to implement local action to tackle the triple nexus of climate change, gender-based violence, and conflict. So that is the relationship that we have. The Women of Courage is like an initiative of the Global Affair Canada. They had another program called WPS, Women, Peace and Security.
Wow.
Then we worked with the WPS and our partner in Africa for gender-based violence, climate change, and conflict issues.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you.
I could maybe just add that we so that as Danielle said, that funding from Global Affairs for those partners ended in March, but we've been able to provide them with some bridge funding, and we have submitted another proposal to Global Affairs, which supports their emerging work around conflict, climate, and gender, and we're waiting to hear about that. But in the meantime, we continue to support them through solidarity funds, and we support these other partners like Oil Watch Africa, for example, is another example that Danielle gave. So I can post in the chat kind of a summary of our final report from the Women, Peace and Security program, which is a 6 years program, and the pretty significant outcomes there, and also a little bit of a summary of what we're hoping to get funding for, which is this emerging work around climate, conflict, and gender.
Thank you, Rachel. Janice, I see Elaine Garreau has her hand up.
Okay, Elaine, do you want to go ahead then?
Okay, thank you. This question is for Leah. Leah Schifra. I hope that she's still here. I was just wondering if KAIROS is is proposing any or asking for any grants from the Canadian government for grants to support migrant workers as we did during the pandemic.
Yes, I'm still here. So in regards to funding, yes, Migrant Justice is continuing to apply to a couple, actually quite several we put in a couple, like quite a lot of proposals in the last couple of months. One being with Health Canada. This is going to be working around like the adaptation strategies for farm workers. So all we're just doing right now is just trying to hear back and hoping and praying that we do hear from someone.
Thank you.
Okay, next I see a question from Elizabeth Snell. Do you want to go ahead, Elizabeth?
Well, I was just wondering if Beth could elaborate a bit whether there is any leadership from Canada in the loss and damage fund that we were asking for, KAIROS was campaigning for at COP29.
Thanks. Yeah, what I'm still kind of working through the analysis and kind of hearing what's happened. There'll be a meeting of the Climate Action Network on Monday next week, which I think we'll dig into a bit more of a debrief. The statement that I do know that Canada put out which was kind of reiterating commitment towards kind of scaling up climate finance. So they did use that word of scaling up. But we don't know by how much, and knowing that we're going into an election year, we're not likely to see the level of commitment required to respond to the impacts, the climate related loss and damage impacts. So yeah, we're hearing things like the right words, but we're not sure how that will be followed up with the actions yet at this point.
Okay, so the next name I see with a question is Charles. Charles,
Yes,
I'm not going to
yes,
say your name right, so I don't want to mutilate it.
I
You had a
understand.
question?
Yes, I have a question for Daniela.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, in that region where she's forecast in RDC, that is South Kivu and North Kivu, you are very aware that there is a conflict taking place and is consuming a lot of lives. And when it comes to the issue of indigenous people who are just staying there in their forests, and these forests are being used as a battleground, what is KAIROS trying to do connected with the church down there so that this conflict can stop? And also, how are they trying to protect these helpless indigenous people, the Piggy Mbatwa who are there? That's my question. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, it was cutting from my end, but from what from what I'm seeing on the chat, you ask how is KAIROS working with partner in South Kivu regarding the conflict, in the context of the conflict, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Was that all? Can I go ahead and
Yeah, it's some of this.
okay,
Yes,
thank you.
mm.
Thank you very much. So yeah, so I guess at this point we are all aware of the conflict crisis in South Kivu. Our partner, Héritier de la Justice, often reach out to us like just to keep us like updated on what is happening. And it has like obviously a very negative impact on the work that they are doing. But so far from our end, what we are doing is that we raise awareness on this conflict, and we advocate against that throughout through the work that we are doing with partner and the local government. So the only thing that we have done so far is to really support like WPS project happening in South Kivu in situation of conflict. When Héritier de la Justice reaches out to us, we do like an advocacy letter. We do something that we share to raise awareness with the government, with different partners, with members of KAIROS, and we like that's yeah, so far that's what we do. I don't know if Rachel has something to add regarding that.
Yes, because okay, share something to add.
Maybe just to add, that we also try, obviously try to amplify those voices and the work that they're doing. So the work that Héritier de la Justice is doing around peace building, right, and around human rights and legal training, sorry, Danielle mentioned that that Chantal from Héritier de la Justice will be going to the Commission on Status of Women. So trying to facilitate partners to participate in important UN meetings like the Commission on Status of Women in March is very important in terms of networking, in terms of advocacy, and in terms of raising these at an international on an international scale. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. And
there is one thing you have to bear in mind. This is not civil war. This is a conflict that is involving a lot of lethal weapons, very, very confiscated weapons. They are bombarding everywhere. They are not minding who are there, and especially in these forests like Kaibega. That's where this time they are putting all the conflicting groups to go and train. And this area is very, very much occupied by the indigenous people. So I'm confused. I think because this is a place where I have been. I know the place, I know the conflict all the time. But before the conflict were just like infiltration. But this time it's an open war, open war. They are fighting, they are killing. And when it comes to the issue of the indigenous people there, the Batwa, the Pygmy Batwa, these are totally useless. It's just like when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. So that this where I have my concern. It's about this helpless, very few armless communities who are just getting involved in this kind of losing lives, of which they even don't know. They are not politicians, they don't know about the politics, they don't know about the governance of the country, but then they become the victims of such conflicts that is being caused by the larger communities. So please, I think this is something that the big should really raise a great concern about these people. There are very few, and once this thing takes more than 10 years, then they're all finished, extinct kabisa. So that's why, in fact, I'm very much concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cha. If I may, I just quickly want to add that you are raising very important points. And when it comes to when we talk about like concrete action, because sometimes you can say that maybe advocacy, raising awareness, it's not concrete enough. We know that in that context, these people that causes wars, they use people like as war machines. So for example, when it comes to like late women and young girl in South Sudan, we have a lot of like rape, a lot of very horrible things happening. So they use them in order to facilitate the war or whatever they are doing. So Héritier de la Justice has so many projects, concrete action when they take care of women and young girls who are victims of these wars, especially in South Kivu. They go on the field, they take care of them, they do empowerment sessions, so many things, and also they are involved in the policy level. They work a lot, to reframe better policy, to hold the government, stakeholders accountable of what is happening in South Kivu. And now we have the 16 days of activism happening. They are doing a lot of work because during the 16 days, we talk about the conflict, we talk about the impact on women and young girls. They are going on the field, they are trying to facilitate the conversation, trying to raise awareness, and they do concrete action, what they can do at their level to overcome this issue. So yeah, but I do understand your point on the importance to have like concrete action and
Daniela, you just have to excuse me, because this is my area. That's where I come from. I come from Rwanda, and I have been visiting these people in many different occasions. I mean, South Kivu, North Kivu, and there is something. Maybe I don't know if you come from their side, but there is something that you have to bear in mind. It's the physical landscape. So when these advocacies are being done, the mobilization, whatever, just being done along what you could call the highway, but there is no highway, I know, because that's where I have been. But if you walk right deep inside in the communities, in fact, no communities, it's just the forests, and most of these forests are occupied by indigenous people. And these forests, that's where these conflict functions are going that concentrate and do a lot of their training. When they're doing this, what they have to do first is just to clear whatever is human, because they are fearing of leaking them in their secrets, leaking them in their tactics they're doing. So they finish them, they kill and finish. So this why I'm very much concerned about that. Anyway, thank you very much. I can talk and maybe two to 3 days, because I'm very much concerned about that. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just want to use this opportunity to say I'm sorry we don't have very much more time. So I'm gonna have to close the questions for now, please, so that we can move on and be finished by the time that we committed to.
Mm.
So I invite you, Charles, to take that up with anybody and everybody you can in KAIROS, just not at this very moment.
Please.
Because it's important for us to hear from people who live from the areas where the conflicts are happening.
Exactly. I was once there. I had an appointment with Sylvia. This is Sylvia and the other lady. But I think I need to come again. I need to come again and discuss more deeply about this conflict in Congo. It's really consuming a lot of human lives. It's a consuming a lot. And when it comes to these indigenous people, it's just two elephants fighting and the rest suffers. Thank you. So I
Thank
don't, excuse me, how can I have a contact? Because I need an appointment to come down and I don't know whom I'm going to meet. I think I have to meet, first of all, I have to meet Colonel Sarazine. That's right. Because
I'm going
I
to
can
ask
just,
Charles, I'm going to ask our staff person, Shannon Neufeld, to tell you who at KAIROS you should talk to about that,
okay, thank you.
And there will
because I don't know the answer.
Mm,
There
thank
will
you very
be an
much.
email for everyone that will include the email addresses for the coordinators of the different programs so that you can reach out to them. They are already on the website as well, and my colleagues would be welcome to put them in the chat at this point.
Thank you. And also,
Okay.
one of the
Want
questions,
to move on
Yeah,
to a couple of pieces that we are wrapping up with, and I thank you very much for your patience, Charles, and everyone. And we are, I'm hearing a bit of an echo here, but one thing that we like to do at regional gatherings, and that's what this is, even though it's online and people might not all be from Great Lakes St. Lawrence, we're glad that you're here and we like to have a record of it. So if you are willing to put on your camera, this is our photo moment. So I would invite you to put on your cameras. I'm going to hide the folks that don't want to put on their cameras and invite you to come forward, like towards your camera if you can. And I'm going to take a couple of pictures. So we're gonna, and I'm just thinking, do I have just one screen of people on their cameras? So if my system allows here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I took a few, and so we've hopefully got some great smiles here. I do also want to share a few things from the network perspective. I need to put my notes back up. I had to take them down as we took the pictures. Give me 1 second to pull up my notes, and that will actually make me quicker because I will
Shannon, may I just go ahead and give a couple thank yous within the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region?
absolutely.
So we're in the final part of our KAIROS Momentum. First, I want to thank Jan O'Hearn, who has retired from the lead of KAIROS Toronto West. She was the main organizer of Decolonizing Hearts and Minds, the 2023 Great Lakes St. Lawrence Fall Conference. This conference included an exhibition of Palestinian and Canadian Indigenous photographs brought to Bloordale United Church by Jan. Jan remains in KAIROS West. Now in leadership is Reverend Brian McIntosh. And I want to give a huge thank you to Ruth Cruikshank, who is joining us this evening with Jim Lindsay, a member of Dufferin KAIROS for many years. Ruth was involved in 10 Days for Global Justice in the years before KAIROS. Over the past 23 years of KAIROS, Ruth has contributed, including being the co-chair of Great Lakes St. Lawrence Region from 2013 to 2015. May Ruth enjoy her retirement in the beauty of the community of Shelburne, Ontario. And now over to you, Shannon, please. Member Relations and Network Coordinator.
All right, thank you so much. So it has been my privilege to be at 4 KAIROS regional gatherings in the past 2 months. The earlier 3 were all hybrid with an in-person and an online option. And I'm going to write a little bit more about it. I'll have it in a blog on the website in time for the KAIROS Times e-newsletter. That will be coming out next week. Keep your eyes peeled for that. But the organizers asked me to say a few words. I'm going to give you just a tiny teaser at this time of night. A few memories. A distinguished knowledge keeper welcoming us to her own territory. An introduction to Christian animism. A promise of new connections with an elder and a group of Indigenous people. So you'll have to read the blog to get the rest. In addition to thank yous that I want to echo and reiterate to folks who have served so well, Jan and Ruth, and we're welcoming Brian, I also wanted to note the South Georgian Bay KAIROS group under the leadership of Jane, which got started in 2023, but I don't think we had a chance to recognize in that way. And to note that there is some interest in starting up a new local group in the Niagara area. And so if you are in or near one of those areas, if you know some folks there who might want to get involved, you can contact me and I can put you in touch with other leaders. I want to give you a very brief update on the work on just peace in the Middle East. That's going to put a link in the chat there. This webpage is a central place for statements, resources, calls to action, and a whole lot more from all of our members. And Rachel and her team have been working hard to collect all of this and to put it up on the website in one place so it's easy to find. There have been a number of new contributions of prayers and resources and statements this fall, so I encourage you to check it out and to check back often for updates. Also note that there is a grassroots plan for a collective day of prayer across Ontario for just peace in the Middle East. I've heard the plan is for a Sunday in January, so keep up with your emails or check the hub for more news coming. And my last point, as some of my colleagues alluded, would be about Jubilee. In 2025, KAIROS will play a leading role in the Canadian Jubilee movement, a movement to strengthen the voices of Indigenous peoples, global partners, the Canadian faith communities, in advocacy for economic and ecological justice. We plan to bring together Indigenous people, Global South partners, and Canadian faith representatives to attend events surrounding the G7, COP30, and G20 global gatherings. We also plan to produce public education resources tailored to Canadian faith communities. This is another moment where I think a hands up, and I'm not sharing my screen this time, so I invite your hands up. If you remember the Canadian Ecumenical Jubilee Initiative, predecessor of KAIROS, who played a leading role in Jubilee from 1998 to 2001. Put your hands up if you, this kind of hand or the electronic hand, if you remember that. Oh, it's great to have that kind of consistent support. A highlight during that time was participation in the global campaign to cancel the debts of the poorest countries, with the gathering of 640,000 signatures on a petition in Canada. Can we match that in 2025 or surpass it? So the question is, will you join us again as we raise our voices for justice? And I will reiterate that it is through your support, through your prayers and advocacy, your actions, your organizing, your learning, and your financial gifts are all an act of hope. And we thank you so much. I'll turn it now back to Sherilyn and the group for our closing comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Shannon, especially for telling us about the initiative during 2025 for the Jubilee, Canadian Jubilee movement, which will be very exciting. And we are close to the end now. We will, in the chat box, you will be able to find the link to a form that you can fill out if you wish to, in order to give feedback to our KAIROS Momentum evening. Feedback to how, if you have liked it, and if you have any suggestions, and just to give us an idea about how we've done this during this time. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. And then I think that we can finish up. It's almost 9 o'clock here in Ontario. And so I'll ask Janice Elzer-Ethie again to do our closing devotion, our closing word of prayer. So thank you very much, Janice.
Thank you, Sherilyn. All right, I wanted to offer a prayer for healing and peace. There are a lot of people in our hearts and on our minds who need healing prayers, and I'm going to name a few. And I invite you to name people who are on your minds and in your hearts as well at the same time when we get to that point in the prayer. Great Creator God, we thank you for your glory and your grace. We lift up to your healing power and your mercy our friends and colleagues. Now you can say the names of the people that you want to name. I'm going to name Jane and Tom Sagar. And someone in my circle, Carl Hitu. And if you want to say the names of the people on your hearts and your minds at this time, that would be good too.
The family of Rene Mashake, who passed this morning, a respected elder here in Guelph.
Thank you.
I'm remembering my mom.
We put
my partner, she's in the hospital.
Thank you. Thank you. We put our worries and our cares in your hands, Lord. Placing the sick among us in your care, we humbly ask that you restore our friends and loved ones to health, and that you bless those who have gone before us. We thank you for the lives of the people who've given us so much, who have passed. And we pray also for a more just and peaceful world. We ask you to help us be instruments of your peace in this world. God of mercy, may we be your hands and your voice in the pursuit of peace and justice for all. Amen. All my relations.
Amen.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for attending. Well, here in Ontario this evening. We very much appreciate having everybody here, and we very much appreciate also the staff members, all the staff who have been here during this period of time, which is here in Ontario in the evening. So we appreciate that time and all the things that we've learned about what KAIROS is involved with. So I would say good evening.
And before we say good evening, Sherilyn, we'd like to thank you and Liz Snell for organizing this evening. So thank you very much. And by the way, Sherilyn was published in today's paper about the unwanted Highway 413 in Ontario. Thank you, Sherilyn.
Letter writing, yes. That's one thing that people in KAIROS can be involved in, as always, and meeting with your MPs or your MPPs. So thank you. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Sherilyn. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good night from BC. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye. Bye.
Good night from Nova Scotia.
Good night from Vancouver.
Oh, wow. A long ways away. It's still late afternoon there.
It's
Good night from
dark.
Victoria.
Yes. Okay.
Thank
From
you.
Victoria. Hello.
Good. Hi, Ronald.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night from Winnipeg.
Oh, yes.
Winnipeg too. Bye-bye now.